so I'm pretty sure this goes without saying, but Storm 5 would be great to see in the future. That would be insane. Like, when I think of in terms of anime games or even just any game that's out there, there's not a lot of games that I would really want to see over Storm 5 because Storm Connections really just disappointed me, you know? Like, it wasn't horrible or anything, but it just kind of didn't really feel like it had the quality of a regular Storm title. I think it's fair to say that CC2 did a really good job with the Storm series, not counting Storm Revolution and Generation since I haven't played those. But especially for an anime game, like that's a really good series in general, but anime games never really feel like they have the same quality as regular games. Maybe that's just me, but when I play games like One Piece Burning Blood or World Seeker, I tend to think of it like this is a really good anime game instead of like this is just a good game. But with the Storm series, I really do believe that at its peak, it's definitely comparable to some of your favorite AAA games. With all that being said, this is gonna kind of be like a dream video. I've been seeing people on YouTube do these kind of videos for a while, but I've never really seen anyone do it on Storm 5, so let's just get into this. Okay, so when I say open world, I don't really mean like in Storm 1. Like, you could roam around in that game, but it was still kinda limited, like you couldn't leave the village or anything like that. But for Storm 5, I would want them to take inspiration from like Rise of a Ninja or Broken Bond. And what I mean by that is they should allow the player to leave the village freely. I don't know why, but for some reason the Storm games got super linear after Storm 1, to the point where you couldn't even jump in the adventure mode for Storm 4. So Storm 5 should definitely be the opposite of that, but I'll go more into detail. So what made Rise of a Ninja and Broken Bond so fun was there were actually platforms to jump on. I don't want to just run in a straight line because that's boring. So the open world should add something to make it more engaging. I don't really know exactly what that would be aside from the platforming that I mentioned, but I do have one idea. They should bring those mob battles back or whatever. You know those battles in Storm 3 where they would just throw a bunch of enemies at you? I feel like the perfect place to put those enemies would be in the open world, but I feel like that would probably get repetitive, so maybe don't use them as often. But that kind of leans more towards combat, so I'll get back to the open world stuff. So another thing you should be able to do in the open world is double jump and sprint. That would definitely make the platforming more fun. But not only that, I feel like you should be able to do parkour like in Assassin's Creed and stuff like that. And if you didn't know, Rise of a Ninja and Broken Bond were both made by Ubisoft, and they've also developed the entire Assassin's Creed series, so they know what they're doing. So I feel like if they worked with CC2 to create an open world Naruto game, then that would be pretty cool. But I have two more things that I would want them to add to the open world. And this first one might be a little controversial. I don't really know if people would want to see this or not, but they should bring back the hand signs. Obviously, we wouldn't have hand signs when we're fighting or anything. That would just be a regular Storm gameplay. The hand signs just added an extra layer of challenge, and it was a really innovative and fun idea that just unfortunately got dropped. I'll give you a couple ideas on how this is supposed to work. Let's say there's a cliff or a building that's too high for Naruto to reach, and he has to weave hand signs or make a ladder out of shadow clones, or maybe bring back the Naruto cannon from Storm 1 and make that its own jutsu. But instead of just pressing Y or circle, you would actually have to weave hand signs. I feel like that would be a lot more fun, honestly. Or let's say you're playing as Choji and you need to get over a bridge, but the bridge is broken, so you have to weave hand signs to use partial expansion and use your big arms to fling yourself to the other side of the bridge. And that leads to the final thing that I wanted to cover for this open world portion, which is everyone should control slightly different. I feel like if they all just controlled the same, it would just be pointless. It would just be like a skin swap, you know? I already mentioned the changes that I'd like to see for Naruto and Choji, but honestly, I don't really know what they would do for everyone else, so they're just gonna have to get creative with it. Actually, I do have an idea for Rock Lee. To be honest, this thing should just be a temporary speed boost. But that's pretty much all I have to say for the open world, so let's get into the next category. Alright, I'll start by saying I didn't really like how in Storm Connections, they decided to remove the tilt for an extra jutsu. Okay, to be honest, it was sort of a neat idea, but no, we don't need that in Storm 5, so just change it back to how it was in Storm 4 and we should be good. But the one thing that they should carry over from the Storm Connections game is the simple mode. Although I would never really use this mode, it's pretty inoffensive and it helps newer players get into the game. No one's really gonna have a problem with this. At worst, they're just gonna ignore it. And besides, it's not like people are throwing up pitchforks and saying, "Get rid of simple mode." Like, it's not that deep, honestly. But the biggest issue I would have with the combat isn't even with the combat itself, but it's the fact that a lot of these characters are in dire, and I repeat, dire need of a new moveset. When I tell you some of those movesets have been getting carried over since Storm 2, which came out in 2009 by the way. No, that's ridiculous. These characters need new movesets and I feel like certain characters should definitely be prioritized over others. I mean, don't get me wrong, I want them to create new movesets for as many people as possible. I just mean I don't want to see Haku getting a new moveset over Shikamaru or something like that. Oh yeah, and one more thing that they need to do is make the weapons relevant again. And I have a feeling that the reason that they made the weapons so trash is because they wanted you to play as Tenten. But instead of making Tenten really good at using weapons, they just decided to make everyone else trash. And this didn't work at all because there's still not a single soul that's picking Tenten with a straight face. Like, especially not in the Big 25. There's no way Jose on earth, bro. Alright, so there's only a couple people who should actually be good with weapons. And those people are Tenten, Naruto, Itachi, and Sasuke. Tenten goes without saying, but Naruto had the Demon Wind Bomb in Storm 1, I think. And in Storm 2, Sasuke and Itachi could just both throw a bunch of shurikens at once. But everyone's still going to be better than they were in Storm 4 because they're going to be able to throw more weapons at once. But I want to go back to the mob battles that I was talking about earlier. In Storm 3, they were so brain dead and piss easy that I could probably sleep through it. And even still get an S rank while I'm at it. So clearly they need to do something to make it more difficult. Okay, so here's my proposal. I think that they should just give the enemies inside the mob their own jutsus. And they could add things like synchronized attacks or whatever to where 3 people can be charging up a laser in the back in the mob and it will be like they're charging up a laser and you'd have to dodge it. So I feel like they should do something like that. I don't know. And they could even make the laser kill you instantly so there's actually a challenge in the mob battles. But I can't really think of anything else I'd want to see for combat, so we're just gonna move on. Alright, so now we're getting into the big stuff. So basically, the playable characters should be most of the Konoha 12, but definitely not all of them. For example, you might not be able to play as Tenten or Ino because they don't really do that much in the story in general, so maybe they'll let you play as them for like a small period of time, but they should not be a priority at all. So Naruto is going to be the main character obviously, but there should be times where there's more than one character available to play. Specifically when you're outside the village. The maximum players that you should be able to play at once is 3, no more than 3 at all. But when you're inside the village or just any village, you should only be able to play as one character because if you're playing as 3 characters at all times, it would just kind of get chaotic, you know? And they should split the playtime across the different characters based on their screen time in the show, so that way it makes more sense. And they should also add playable characters that aren't even going to be in the main story, but they're like bonus content that you can unlock after completing the main story. And this is where Tenten and Ino could be, honestly. This is where they should go. And this is also where they can kind of go crazy with it and let us play as people who we don't get to see very often. Whether that be the Kage like Hashirama or Tobirama, or it could be like someone who we don't really care about that much like Anko or something. I couldn't really think of a way for how these characters were supposed to be unlocked, but I do know that the extra playable characters should kind of be organized like a Lego game. You know how you have like the main characters and then you have the extra characters that aren't actually in the story, but most of them are just like in the game. But all I ask is please don't put these extra characters behind a paywall. That would just be so pathetic, and yeah, don't do that. But seriously, why did we have to pay for Road to Boruto in Storm 4? It wasn't even that much content and should have just been free to download. Side note, the game should run at higher than 60 FPS on PC because PC can definitely handle that. But another thing that you should be able to do after completing the game is free play, and I'll explain what this is. So free play is being able to go back to any mission after completing the story and choosing which character to play them in. So let's say I finished the story and I wanted to go back to play the Sasuke retrieval arc, for example. Now in the main story, it would just force me to play as Naruto, Kiba, you know, everybody who is there. But in free play, I could choose anyone as long as I have them unlocked. Now this would easily add a ton of replay value and, you know, it would just make the most sense. Okay, next category. Okay, so now I'm going to get into how this game is supposed to be organized. So this game's main campaign is going to be pretty long, but they're also going to have to make a side campaign on some Road to Boruto type shit, because technically he's the main character of the series now. So the main campaign should be all of OG Naruto and Shippuden. And before you go, oh that's way too long, we're not expecting this game to come out anytime soon. And on top of that, the game is only going to cover the core arcs that are absolutely necessary. So no Sora, no Gurren, none of that stuff. It's just going to be like the main things that you need for the story to make sense. They should also carry over the history mode that they had in Connections and put everything I've been talking about so far in there. And then they're gonna have to put the story mode label on Boruto's mode because I already mentioned that he is the main character of the series now, so yeah. Oh, and I completely forgot to talk about online play. Just make the netcode better than it's been in previous years, and yeah, that's all I have to say, to be honest. Okay, so now that I've gone through everything that I'd like to see for this game, Do I think that this game is ever gonna even come out? Well, to be honest, I don't think so. I mean, let's face it, CyberConnect already has their hands full with games like Hinokami Chronicles 2, and I'm sure they're working on other things as well. I'd imagine that JJK would get a game from CyberConnect at some point too. I mean, the show is kinda popping off right now, so I'm well aware that this game will most likely never come to fruition, but I just thought it would be fun to come on here to talk about the things that I feel like would not only make the perfect Storm game, but the perfect anime game as well. I mean, it's been 9 whole years since Storm 4 came out. That game is pretty nostalgic for me because it's the only game that I've ever gotten the year it came out. Pretty funny how I literally played the Storm series in reverse order, so the first one I played was Storm 4 and the last one I played was Storm 1. But if they ever do get around to this game, it probably won't have half the stuff that I mentioned here. If or when they get to this game, it'll probably just be like some low budget cash grab, and it'll probably be focused on Boruto, so that's another con. Well, at least for me. The sad part is they know they need Naruto in the title if they want to sell. So they'll do some bullshit like Naruto x Boruto Storm 5, and like, I hate that. If you're confident in Boruto, then just make him the main character. But it's like they're using Naruto as a crutch to get like more sales. But at the same time, I know I'm not buying that if it just says Boruto Storm 5, like that's so dead. It's just a shame because I know if they did the stuff that I mentioned here, it would sell well, like it would do a lot of good sales. Now that I think about it, if they did do all the things that I said, it would probably be like 100 gigabytes or something like that. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say for this topic, so I'm out.